Alright, so I'm gonna preface this by saying that I am not here to defend incest. Okay? This video is admittedly a bit clickbaity, since instead of addressing the Alex situation, as I'm probably gonna title it, directly, it's more so supposed to act as food for thought. A bit of a thinking exercise on how some moral decisions are a bit more irrational than they seem. To get your brain gears a turn before AI strips us of our abilities to think. So, Street Fighter 6 recently had their newest DLC character added, that being Alex. And during his arcade mode, he married and impregnated his cousin. Now, I'm going to assume that all of us are on the same page here, and we think that this is not okay, right? It's incest, and I hope all of us can agree that incest is bad. But after taking a good look at this situation, it got me thinking, why exactly do we think incest is bad? Right? Let me present you a situation, right? Let's say we have two blood related adults of around the same age, and they are in a consenting, incestuous relationship, and they both agree to not have children. Now, if I were to ask you, do you think this is morally correct, right? I feel like a lot of people would still say no. I mean, that's at least what I said, right? I still think this is not good because it's still incest. But I want you to use your rational brain, right? I want you to become a philosopher for a minute, think rationally about this. Why exactly do you think it's not right? Like, intuitively, the idea that this is bad is in your brain, but like rationally think about it. Why is it there? Why do I think that this is the wrong thing? Right? Why do I not morally agree with this? That's sort of the thing that I started to notice the more I researched the whole why do we consider incest bad thing. Because the only real reason I was able to find for people considering incest as wrong is the fact that it has a higher chance of creating genetic disabilities, genetic alterations, recessive genes, all that stuff. I'm not gonna get into detail with all, right? And well, in fairness, right, going back to Alex, he did have kids, which is the last thing you want to do in an incestuous relationship. So yeah, there you go. We've deduced that rationally, Alex did not do the right thing. Yeah, see, we addressed the situation. This video is technically not clickbait. But yeah, in the scenario that I presented where they are not having kids and both of them are around the same age and consenting, like, why do we think that it's wrong, right? One possible explanation is that the scenario that I've presented, in which incest is rationally not wrong, is a bit too optimistic, right? There are way too many conditions for it to be a realistic situation. Because let's take an example: older sibling, younger sibling, right? In that situation, consent is a bit hard to quantify, right? Because it's still an older sibling. They have some level of authority over the younger sibling, right? And it's kind of hard to quantify consent in that scenario because it's kind of like pedophilia, I guess. How the hell did I end up here? Even if, like, verbally the younger sibling says they consent, it's a bit hard to say because because to them the older sibling is a figure of authority, right? In their mind, they should obey the older sibling because that's just what they think is correct. So in that scenario, consent is a bit difficult to quantify, and so you could rationally say that, yeah, in this scenario, incest is wrong. But then again, in the scenario that I presented, which, by the way, I didn't create, many philosophers have already presented the scenario before me, right? And in fact, if you find the things that I discussed in this video interesting to any degree, I highly recommend you do some research on this because it is pretty cool. But like in that scenario, we can't really rationally come up with an explanation to why incest is bad, right? My personal take to like why we think incest is bad is that inherently incest is not wrong. It's just that more often than not, it is. Because in order for incest to be not wrong, there have to be a lot of conditions set on it, which are just not realistic, right? So more often than not, it ends up being wrong, right? You get what I'm trying to say? Now, even if, we, I guess I say that incest is not inherently wrong, I still don't like it. I'm not a philosopher. I don't have to, I'm allowed to be a hypocrite, I guess. I still think incest is wrong, and I still think Alex's story was a mistake. But if you have any alternate reasons to why you think incest is wrong, especially in the scenario that was presented in the video, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about, right? This, as I said, this is mainly food for thought. Go at it in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye. That's about it.